We have somebody here who is an expert on weapons. I would now like to call Justin Hammer, our current primary weapons contractor.
Let the record reflect that I observed Mr. Hammer entering the chamber, and I am wondering if and when any actual expert will also be in attendance.
Absolutely. I'm no expert. I defer to you, Anthony. You're the wonder boy. Senator, if I may well not be an expert, but you know who was the expert? Your dad, Howard Stark. Really a father to us all, and to the military-industrial age. But let's just be clear, he was no flower child. He was a lion. We all know why we're here. In the last 6 months, Anthony Stark has created a sword with untold possibilities, and yet he insists it's a shield. He asks us to trust him as we cower behind it. I wish I were comforted, Anthony. I really do. I'd love to leave my door unlocked when I leave the house. But this ain't Canada. You know, we live in a world of grave threats, threats that Mr. Stark will not always be able to foresee. Thank you. God bless Iron Man. God bless America.
That is well said, Mr. Hammer. The committee would now like to invite Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes to the chamber.
Rhodey? What? Hey, buddy. Didn't expect to see you here.
Look, it's me. I'm here. Deal with it. Let's move on.
I just
Drop it.
All right, I'll drop it.
I have before me a complete report on the Iron Man weapon compiled by Colonel Rhodes. And Colonel, for the record, can you please read page 57, paragraph 4?
You're requesting that I read specific selections from my report, Senator?
Yes, sir.
It was my understanding that I was going to be testifying in a much more comprehensive and detailed
I
manner.
understand. A lot of things have changed today.
You
so
do
if
understand
could just
that reading a single paragraph out of context does not reflect the summary
Just
of
read
my
it,
findings.
Colonel. I do. Thank you.
Very well. As he does not operate within any definable branch of government, Iron Man presents a potential threat to the security of both the nation and to her interests. I did, however, go on to summarize that the benefits of Iron Man far outweigh the liabilities,
that's
and
enough.
that it would
That's
be in our
enough, Colonel.
interest to fold
That's
Mr.
enough.
Stark into the existing chain of command,
I'm not a
Senator.
joiner, but I'll consider Secretary of Defense, if you ask nice. We can amend the hours a little bit.
I'd like to go on and show, if I may, the imagery that's connected to your
I
report.
believe it is somewhat premature to reveal these images to the
With all
general
due
public at this
respect,
time.
Colonel, I understand, and if you could just narrate those for us, we'd be very grateful.
To the images. Intelligence suggests that the devices seen in these photos are in fact attempts at making manned copies of Mr. Stark's suit. This has been corroborated by our allies and local intelligence on the ground, indicating that these suits are quite possibly at this moment operational.
Hold on one second, buddy. Let me see. Something here. Oh, boy, I'm good. I commandeered for screens. I need them. Time for a little transparency. Now let's see what's really going on.
What does he do?
If you'll direct your attention to said screens, I believe that's North Korea.
Can you turn that off? Take it off?
Iran. No grave, immediate threat here. Is that Justin Hammer?
Right leg up.
How did Hammer get in the game?
Arm up.
Justin, you're on TV. Focus up.
Okay, let's be a left switch. Left, just go turn to the right. Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
Wow. Yeah, I'd say most countries 5-10 years away. Hammer Industries 20.
I'd like to point out that that test pilot survived.
I think we're done is the point that he's making. I don't think there's any reason.
Point is, you're welcome, I guess. Because I'm your nuclear deterrent. It's working. We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace. What more do you want? For now! I tried to play ball with these ass clowns.
F you, Mr. Stark. F you, buddy. We're adjourned. We're adjourned for the day.
Okay.
You've been a delight.
Excelsior True Believers, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at Armor Wars, which was revealed to be in production at Disney's Investor Day, and we can actually sort of kind of tell what's going to happen in this, even though we've gotten nothing more than one confirmed actor, and therefore one confirmed character in this series. So let's dive into it. The subtitle for this show should just be "Boom, you're looking for this," because Don Cheadle is back as James Rhodes, the War Machine, which this is a War Machine story. This is a War Machine story. He's finally going to actually get a proper thing that's just his, and we're going to get to see some War Machine stories. There are a couple of other characters we can kind of guess might turn up in this, but I'll get to that in a second. When will this air? When will it be released? 2022. Best guess for that is September 16th. I will do a full breakdown at some point with dates and everything. Obviously with some confirmed dates, and then using that as a template to sort of give us the rest of the release dates for all of these projects that I'm doing videos on this month. Oh, excuse me. And yeah, it will release on Disney Plus. Now, what's it about, and how's it going to fit in? Like I said, we only got the one thing. Even my release date, there is speculation. We know it's going to be some like a 2022 release date, but my speculation is the September 16 bit. And honestly, yeah. What was I talking about? Let's get back on track. I think the motorbike that's we needed to get outside was distracting me. So in the comics, during the Armor Wars storyline, and it's actually kind of funny that you can just look at one character's involvement in this and it basically tells you the entire plot. It's kind of crazy. And that character's not Iron Man. And considering it's an Iron Man comic, you would assume that it is. But if you really want just like a nice, quick little, this is what happens, you've actually got to look at Justin Hammer, who was played by Sam Rockwell in Iron Man 2. He showed back up again at the end of Iron Man 3, in All Hail the King, which was supposed to be the little link between Iron Man 3 and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, as far as you're not the real Mandarin, but he does exist. We will eventually show you him. So that's kind of cool. But Justin Hammer, during the Armor Wars storyline in the comics, he had Tony Stark's Iron Man technology stolen by way of using a villain by the name of Spymaster, and then Hammer then sold it to a number of superpowered villains who wore armor. These included characters like Stiltman. I'm not joking, there is a character who wears a suit of armor, and its most impressive feature is that it has legs that telescope up, and that's about it. The Raiders, the Mauler, the Spider-Man villain, the Spider-Man villain Beetle would be an interesting one to show up. Crimson Dynamo and Titanium Man, and it is those last two that I think are most likely to see. There's actually a really interesting part within, I think it's this storyline in the comics, they actually end up, those two characters, Crimson Dynamo and Titanium Man, end up teaming up with Radioactive Man in the comics, as like a little 3-person team, which is very interesting that it's those two. because those two in the comics are also both Soviets, both Russians, and I think that, and I'll get to my little theory in a second, but I think that that's going to be an important factor of their character. Radioactive Man Chen Lu, I'm pretty sure, is supposed to be Chinese. He's still, at least at the time that these were being produced, they were both, seemed to be very sort of threatening to America and communist. I think is the most polite way to put it. But obviously, being the propaganda machines that comics can be sometimes, comics weren't so polite about it. Anyway, so then Iron Man, or in this case it's going to be War Machine, will set about to disable the Stark-based technology in those suits in question. And in the comics, Iron Man even went as far as disabling government-sanctioned technology of the same kind in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Mandroids and the Vault, which is another super prison for supervillains. They're guardsmen, which is essentially just the Iron Legion, leading him into conflict with the Captain, which was Captain America's identity at the time, and his fellow Avengers. Which, if we take out that last bit where he disables government technology and stuff, we have, like, we're just going to be revisiting Iron Man 2, basically. That's the first time Don Cheadle played War Machine. The main sort of instigator of this whole thing is Justin Hammer, basically stealing Tony Stark's work. And we did see in one of his videos, he was trying to recreate an Iron Man suit himself. Now that Tony Stark's dead and there was the snap, pretty easy to get your hands on that technology. What you doing? Sniffing? Okay. Yeah, so I think it's going to be pretty easy to sort of set up, like, yep, he was released from prison. Really interesting thought is, was he in prison for life? And if so, if he got dusted and then came back, does that count as him having died? And therefore, by technicality, he is released. That's an interesting thought. All those people that were in prison with life sentences that got snapped away, are they now free to roam about again? Because I mean, some of those people, the cops have eventually put them away, or could have been working on those cases for years, and now they've got to wait for them to make the same sort of mistake again. Kind of insane to think about. But if we just sort of look at that sort of in essence, Justin Hammer steals Tony Stark's technology, gives it to some people who have armored suits, and then it's up to War Machine to sort of clean up that mess and make sure that Tony Stark's legacy as Iron Man isn't besmirched or damaged in any way. Seems like a pretty nice plot to me. Throw in Crimson Dynamo, who was one of the identities of Crimson Dynamo, probably the most best known one, is Anton Vanko, the guy who was the father of Ivan Vanko in Iron Man 2, and in Iron Man Armored Adventures, which is a cartoon that has a purple suit of armor for the rescue suit for Pepper Potts, which the MCU kind of copied. Justin Hammer himself is Titanium Man. So there's a couple of little things in different parts that could be like, we're going to take that as inspiration, and that, and we could end up seeing the same sort of a thing. The other thing too is that the Dmitry Bukharin version of Crimson Dynamo starts out as an Iron Man villain, eventually realizes that what he's, that he doesn't want that sort of a life, and he goes on to join the Winter Guard, which Red Guardian is also a part of. I did discuss that in my Black Widow Everything We Know About video, and she also showed up for the first time in Iron Man 2. So there's another connection there that just makes perfect sense. And if I'd known this Armor Wars series was coming back then, I probably would have said that this was going to tie in. But this now gives us Red Guardian and Crimson Dynamo. We just need Ursa Major and Darkstar, and we've got the Winter Guard. And then that could mean that once Crimson Dynamo is kind of like, yeah, no, I'll help you. This guy's bad news. Justin Hammer might be like, I'll do it myself then, and wear the Titanium Man armor. That would also allow this series to fill out some backstory for War Machine. What are you doing down there? Keep it quiet. Would allow it to fill out some backstory for War Machine, as well as continue that particular storyline that was set up in Iron Man 2. Here we have a guy who wants to be the benefactor for someone who's going to go after, and he said this in Iron Man 2, go after Stark's legacy. Stark's legacy is now the only thing that remains of Tony Stark. If you are able to damage that irreparably now, there's no way that Tony Stark himself can come back from that. There's no more that Tony Stark can do, period, let alone to reinstate his position as the guy who saved literally everyone. The original Armor Wars villain Jack Taggart, who takes on the name Firepower in the comics, was the guy who blew up the Chinese theatre because of his extremis in Iron Man 3. So this is definitely going to be looking at the Iron Man movies as a trilogy, maybe some of the more Iron Man centric parts of the Avengers movies. Potentially this could even feed into, well, Iron Man trained this kid, knowing that he was only 15, to be a hero, and so there could be a couple of different ways that Hammer tries to take this down. But I definitely think Hammer's going to be in there. So Sam Rockwell, definitely think the Crimson Dynamo and Titanium Man are going to be our main villains. What are you doing? Yeah, I definitely think they're going to be the main villains, and in the comics, Tony Stark and James Rhodes get Scott Lang to help them out because of his being a thief, as well as his ability to shrink. He can sort of go in and find out who stole the tech to begin with and what it's being used for, who has it now, allowing Iron Man to then just go around and disable them all. So Paul Rudd might also show up, which would be kind of cool. If it does, I think it's only going to be for like the first episode, and even then it's only going to be like a little cameo, quick thing of him being like, yeah, okay, I'll go and fight it, and I'll like text you the details or something, and then he'll like shrink down and fly off on an ant, and that'll be that. But yeah, let me know what you think of my theory in the comment section down below. Do you like it? Do you think that it fits the original comics pretty well, at least in essence, in spirit? Are you keen to see Sam Rockwell potentially show back up as an actual threat this time, instead of just a guy who talks shit non-stop? Because that's what we've been given in Iron Man 2, and I want to see Sam Rockwell actually play a menacing character. I think he'd be able to do it really well, and he wasn't given the opportunity to, so a little bit of a shame there. But what do you reckon? And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and that notification bell if you want to be notified when I upload videos. So until next time, guys, keep your heads great on.